I'm James Lankford from Oklahoma's 5th District, and I'd like to get a chance to chat with you today about what everyone's talking about, the fiscal cliff. Let's start with what is the fiscal cliff. It's really three aspects. The first of which are the Affordable Care Act, or what people call Obamacare. Those taxes begin January the 1st. It's on the middle class by taking away a lot of deductions, and also on the upper brackets by changing the rates, that their rates go up for people making $200,000 or more. Second aspect is the spending reductions. Last year, Congress and the President agreed we would reduce spending. That hasn't occurred yet. If that doesn't happen, there's an automatic trigger to across-the-board cut all these different accounts. That begins in January as well. The third aspect are the tax rates. The previous lame duck Congress in 2010 extended all the tax rates from the lowest to the highest, took all those rates, put them out 2 years, and had them all expire at the end of this year. The White House thinks the problem is the fiscal cliff. We think the problem is the debt and the deficits that we have. The reason we have a fiscal cliff at all, a mandatory reducing spending, all these tax increases, everything that's coming, is because we have this huge national debt. So while the White House is saying, how do we turn off sequestration and the spending cuts, we're trying to say, no, how do we actually pay down the debt? Here's what we're up against. We spend $1 trillion more a year than we're actually bringing in. We're focused on how do we get our spending back down to a level that we can actually afford, while the White House is focused very much on how do we raise taxes to the level that we're trying to spend. There is this feeling that if you just raise tax rates on the upper bracket, it will bring in a lot more income. That actually doesn't work out in real life. Let me give you a practical example of that. My kids in elementary school in 1st grade and 5th grade had a teaching time on the Revolutionary War. They do it the same time, 1st graders, 5th graders. We were told as parents with our 1st grader to send 100 pennies to school with them the next week in a little bag. They didn't know why. Well, what they found out is during the middle of the day for the 1st graders, the 5th graders barged in the middle of the day while they're studying the Revolutionary War and said, we've imposed a tax on you to sharpen your pencil of 1 penny, to get a Kleenex as a penny, to get a drink of water as a penny. And then the 5th graders would run out like the British, but then they came back the next day and said, now it's 2 pennies, and they raised their taxes on them. By Wednesday, it's 3 pennies to sharpen your pencil and to get a Kleenex and to get a drink of water. Well, shockingly enough, my 1st grader came home on Wednesday night, sharpened a bunch of pencils and put them in her sack and said, I need to take all these sharpened pencils with me tomorrow. And I said, why? And she said, well, because we get a 3-penny tax for sharpening our pencil, and so I'm just going to take more pencils to school with me tomorrow. I laughed and I said, my 1st grader knows how to legally avoid taxes. I can assure you, if you just raise the rates on people, they're going to find a way to get around it. What President Obama is recommending on the upper bracket is that their dividend tax goes from 15% to 43.4% next year. Well, what's going to happen is people in the upper bracket just aren't going to invest in stocks that pay dividends anymore, and they'll shift it to something else, and all the rest of Americans in the middle class that have stocks that pay dividends, those stocks will just go away because they don't have the upper bracket investing in them, and it suddenly punishes everybody. I hope this is helpful while we're talking about the fiscal cliff. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of sense that we're actually not trying to work on this. We are. We're trying to solve the problem, though, in a way that actually solves it, rather than just doing some sort of statement that, hey, we did something. I'd rather not just do something. I'd rather do something that actually helps us deal with our debt and our deficit. Thanks for allowing us to represent you and your family.